as you are saying, as you are alluding to, matters that are looking at how these agencies, for example, the Ministry of Health, right now with regards to the doctors, one aspect of this particular disaster is to avert the cholera crisis or outbreak that is being projected. The other ones that we are also going to think about after this is now that our farms are now swept over, that we do not have crops. Could there be a potential of famine immediately after these particular floods? You understand? So this particular, and I believe that technocrats in the government as well, and outside that advises the government of the potential of this particular, disasters, even as they happen, preventive, even as they happen, maybe post after the disaster for what we are saying, then we are able to actually say that indeed there are other things that humanly we cannot manage as human beings. For example, the ones that we are saying floods that are caused by climate change. We can say even as the government tried to do this is above board. But there are others that we can see as a result of negligence. And you're talking about the doctor strike negotiation, whether the collective bargaining agreement for 2017 still sticks, or is it superior to the SRC circular of March 2024? The kind of conversation that goes on, or who is sabotaging this kind of conversation? All in all, what we are saying is that the buck stops with who? The government, the allied ministries that are concerned with trying to avoid this crisis. At the end of the day,
do you think they are doing enough to avoid possible deaths from a possible cholera outbreak? Forget about the flooding situation. Now we're already past that.
Yes. So from what you're seeing, from what all of us are seeing, is that there have been a lot of attempts to try to negotiate with the doctors and to negotiate with the medics. But all of us, we are not previewed. We are not sitting at an advantage where we are seeing all what is happening at those negotiating tables. But I think there have been a concerted effort from both the parties to try to resolve these issues. The three issues that are still remains, I am hopeful they are going to be resolved. But the question is when we are having this disaster,
will it be resolved
projected,
after a number of Kenyans have died out of cholera? That's a question.
Ndimuli, today I want to ask a question. Who is the government? Because I have seen MPs blaming the government. I have seen doctors blaming the government, teachers blaming the government. Who is actually the government? It's a kind of a ghost. I tell you, the government is anybody who is earning from taxpayers. And the government include those doctors, those members of parliament, anybody being paid by taxpayers. If you are a teacher and you don't work in a private school, you work in a public school, you are a part of the government. And you should be part of the solution. And the president is one of the members of the government because he's earning from taxpayers. He's just as equal as that doctor earning from taxpayers. So the government is all of us, and we should take our responsibility. And it's high time that we realize that when it is a natural disaster, all of us will shelve everything that
surely there are those government employees who bear greater responsibility than others.
Yeah, it is only who bear the greatest responsibility or the smaller responsibility, but this one, a natural disaster, is a collective responsibility for all of us. And I want to call upon and plead with the doctors. Please, CBA is not superior that a disaster that we are facing. The warning has been issued. There will be an outbreak of not only cholera, but waterborne diseases, including typhoid and others, malaria and others.
Okay.
Please let us save lives. And then lastly, I've heard about the issue of clogged sewages and other things. We should also ask ourselves, who clogged these sewages? Garbage does not fall from heavens. It is us that must take responsibility and make sure that we don't litter around. Go to Kigali and see how responsible citizens are. So it's also high time that even us, who are taxpayers, take responsibility and also be responsible enough not to clog our sewage systems and then later on say that the government is not doing anything. And the clogged sewage system is not the floods that we have witnessed. The floods that we have witnessed, some of them are saying it is because of clogged sewage system. Which sewage system was clogged in Maimayu? Okay. Which sewage system is clogged in Susu?
Just before we move on, let's put things straight. we are not saying that the floods are because of clogged system. The floods is because of
it is
climate
excess
yes.
Natural rain that has come in torrents that we cannot fathom. But you see, in our case, with due respect, my colleague and friend, you know, we've been both enemies and friends at the same time, in equal magnitude with this man. Yes, we know all of us, we are actually calling upon all of us to be vigilant and do the right thing. However, there are also some of us who have been charged with the responsibility that in case some of us don't do what is right, we take action and cause them to do what is right. And this is what we are saying. Every government officer, wherever they are, let us not sleep on the job. However small, however big it may be. This is what we are saying. And just to emphasize what we are saying, that there are some with greater responsibility. For example, we have talked about the Mamambogas. They hardly come to Parliament to say that we are allocating these funds to build this dam. It's only a few of us who do that. So then when we are doing this, priority on how we spend these monies, now that we know if there were floods of this magnitude, this is what would happen in our country. We can build a scenario and say, if it happens again, what can we do to at least make its impact lesser, especially the negative impacts? I think this is what we need to think about and stop the blame game. Okay. If we think in that direction in Dimuli, we will make it better. But we must applaud President William Ruto. I think I like very much the idea that he said, okay, it is school time, but let our children hold. Yes. Because our schools have been spoiled, the roads are messy. And
even as we applaud the president,
let's avoid every disaster.
Even as we applaud the president on his actions, a lot of questions, especially when it comes to communication from his own officers, are called into question. A case in point last week, yes, we saw the president addressing the nation on Friday. Before that, he had held 2 cabinet meetings, specifically to discuss the current flood situation on Tuesday and on Thursday. Then immediately after the Thursday meeting, for example, the Education CS issued a circular directing schools on how they were going to open and giving them a certain direction in a document, an official government document, meaning that this is what had been discussed at cabinet level. Then on Friday, we get a totally different kind of communication from the president on the postponement. Fine, it was the right thing to do. We are not questioning that. But is everything correct? Is everything right at that level of governance when a CS, immediately after a cabinet meeting, issues one kind of communication and the president hours later says something totally different? Same government, same cabinet, totally different kind of communication. There is a problem there.
And it's not the first time there had been contradiction in the way government communicates. That's why I was telling you, when you look at before, you even remember the time about this fake fertilizer, when the president says a different directive, the following day the cabinet secretary for agriculture gives a different directive. So I think one of the possible things that we see as effective and functional governments around is by the fact there's an aligned and harmonized communication. Whether the press secretaries or whether the government spokespersons give same information that you can trust. As Honorable Sankoka said, that the government is everyone, especially when at that particular level, at the executive level, a directive is given, then you expect even those who did not, appear on public in media are aligned to that kind of, communication. So I think even as we move by, reading 2 different scripts by, from executive, then that is indeed, it points out to either, one is not understanding the other, or the other one has not understood the other policies. And that is definitely, that we cannot say is a rocket science. You can actually see what is happening. Is there also a time when the president read a riot act? Remember one of the cabinet meetings.
Does he trust his members of cabinet?
He read a riot act to principal secretaries, to cabinet secretaries, and give a directive that if he knows more in your ministry than you know, then he says that is a problem to him. It's exactly the manifest is what is happening, that he gives a different directive, a cabinet secretary reads another one. So this kind of contradiction probably, really needs to be checked across on how the government communicates its strategies, its policies. But I wanted also to put this into, to throw this into the spanner. I mean, we are seeing this catastrophic, outcome with these floods. I am yet to hear from our neighboring, because Honorable Sakokis have the vantage points probably of telling us what's happening within other regions. We are not really seeing these. Maybe their press are not really giving in public.
We do.
But for Kenya, it seems to be...
I can tell you for sure. We look at the
highways in Tanzania have been
we look at the front pages of all newspapers in the region.
And how are they managing? This
in
could
Tanzania,
be...
probably Tanzania has been worst hit by floods in comparison to Kenya. In Uganda, they're only experiencing now the swelling of the Lake Victoria now, but they're preparing ahead. My concern is how we're handling it in Kenya.
That's what I'm saying, that they're handling...
After two cabinet meetings in a week, which is very rare. One would imagine that the communication coming from that kind of forum would be very direct and logical for everyone.
That is how you people go wrong. Because you are talking about two contradicting communications. And I think you should blame nature. You remember the cyclone in Dai. All of a sudden it have died. So nature changes within minutes. We were told Mombasa, get prepared. There was clear warnings. We have shown videos of how the cyclone in Dai is actually traveling towards the coastline of Indian Ocean. All of a sudden we were told because of the tropical weather, it have died somewhere before it reaches the coastline. So there was, if I had communicated a few hours earlier, based on the information of the cyclone in Dai hitting the coastline, then it will have been different from the communication. A few hours after, we were told it have died. The cyclone in Dai have died. So I will still say, don't evacuate. All of a sudden we went to our Indian Ocean. We had closed the coastline, no swimming, no fishing, no walking around the beach. The KWS were mobilized. The Kenya police were mobilized. Everybody, the county government was there. All of a sudden we were told, no, it is not hitting. So there will be two communications. So I think it is not contradiction or there is contradicting reports. It is developing reports, and that is what we should actually stress in Ndimuli.
Okay.
Lastly, you are saying that the president read a riot act
I did not
to the
say
cabinet.
That. I think it's
he said yes, and it is true. How many times have you read a riot act in your own family?
And that's
yes, it's something that is natural.
It's a level that the president has in members of his cabinet.
Does it mean that you have a certain level of confidence to your family? Because you have read a riot act several times.
How many times do you read it?
Okay, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Ndimuli, for protecting my space. I think from what I saw, partly I may want to agree with Sankok a little bit, because these communications came in series of at least different space in time, though it was very short. However, given what we have experienced before, we might just want to appeal that let there be a little more consultation, because I'm imagining if I was the CS or the PS, I say this and then 1 hour later the president wakes up and says something different. Yes, it looks weird. We have to accept that. But if the information that reaches the president is the same information that the PS has and the CS has, then if there is to be a change, then we will see that progress, like, okay, gentlemen, we have said this, but the new development, news reaching us, the way you people put it, is that we have to change the earlier statement and now it is this way. So it can still be permitted, but let us see a little bit more of synergy in harmonization of what is going on. So
do you have concerns about the way the president and his cabinet works? There have been concerns, and I think one of the dailies yesterday talked about very many CSs, about 6 of them who've been called out for failures, including the health CS, agriculture CS, road CS, and some of those failures are linked to the kind of flooding crisis. Do you think that probably the president needs to crack the whip on some of his cabinet members for him to be able to work better in probably some of these responses?
To me, I want to say he's been playing a gentleman because I think he has identified, for him to even have to crack that whip or riot act that we are talking about, he must have identified certain lapses that he had wanted improved. So it is also normal, like he says, in a family setting, you might have to warn your people and your team, and you are expecting improvements. So I think our CSS, like even those ones that were listed, all they can do is to try and improve and be apt. You know, one thing that I admire about President William Ruto is a man hands-on. And everybody who is working with him needs to tighten up their belt. And before they wake up, they should be listening with one ear and the other one is sleeping to get all the information that is happening in the country, especially the CSS. And by the end of the day, they should be ahead of him so that it doesn't appear like they are ignorant of what they ought to know. Okay. And the president knows it. I think that one can be sorted out. So maybe instead just giving them time to see. You know, there is also human development. As a boss, you don't want to kick everybody out the first time they make a question. But if it persists, then he needs to do the right thing, just to get other people to do the job.
And a lot of questions have been asked about the conduct of members of the cabinet, and one of them is actually facing a motion of impeachment in the National Assembly. I think the committee will be reporting back on Tuesday next week on that. I want us to move on to another discussion before we get to the AU. And this one is very political, and it has to do with the UDA party, which you sought to distance even from other parties. Yes. And this is a very interesting discussion, Bwana Orogo. It's on the front page of the Taifa Leo.
Oh, my
director can help us. If you can put the front page of the Taifa Leo on the screen so that we take a look at it. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo inasema ndoto ya Ruto yapigwa breki. Masuala ya kisiasa, mambo ya chama tu. Rais amekuwa na mpango wa kuunda chama kimoja cha kitaifa kabla ya uchaguzi mkuu wa mwaka 2027. Ndio gazeti hapo.
Screaming headlines, ndio wapate kuuza.
Lakini wanasema kuna pingamizi vya matanzu ni kama vile Ford Kenya na ANC ulitaja.
Yes.
Katika muungano tawala wa Kenya Kwanza vyataka chama kipya kabisa kuundwa badala ya kumezwa na kile cha UDA. It's a discussion around folding parties like ANC and Ford Kenya and dissolving them into UDA. And now it would appear there is a bit of hesitation, especially once this grassroots elections process began. Now we've seen this clamor for dissolving smaller parties to form one probably monolithic party, one big party. We saw it happen with the Jubilee. The formation of Jubilee from a Jubilee Alliance to a Jubilee Party. It has always been the dream of President William Ruto to have one big, strong party heading to an election. But it would appear that this desire is meeting some headwinds. Do you think he'll ever be able to achieve this, especially given the kind of parties that he is working with, parties like Ford Kenya that have been in existence for quite a while?
Well, I think I was also reading the book that was written by Eden Duale on what's the title of the book? I think when he gave a chronological history of engagement in elective politics, and especially in one of the chapters he notes that when he phone called
for the record, that's the title.
For the record, when he had an opportunity to talk to the president post the Jubilee Constitutive Party merger, and he notes on the book that the president, the deputy president by then, and him in that conversation, he mentioned that there might have been regrets on the folding of URP. You remember by that time, on other Jubilee parties to form one particular party. So when I again have seen the efforts by the president's side to try to either coerce or persuade constitutive is agreeing with the camps, you know.
Persuade, not coerce.
Political parties, you know, to fold the camps. Honorable Sankok, is either strategies is persuade or coerce in different ways to unfold. I wonder what is in the mind of the president as a politician who is a tactician, politician, and experienced. And perhaps one, I think, is simply because of, you know, the dilemma and the conflicts within coming into terms of fulfilling, you know, the baggage of just trying to meet the demands of different political parties that are within, you know, the Kenya Kwanza coalition. I for sure see this as a really big test of time, simply because that the way you've alluded to, some of these political parties have got institution memory and have a membership that can be traced two-way long. You know, KANU, Ford Kenya, and, you know, other political parties all the way back. You could remember even our fathers and people who've gone before, you know, attributes their membership to participation in multi-party through these political parties, or some of them, like Ford Kenya. I definitely see that as becoming a really problem in terms of either trying different ways of asking them to fold, their political parties to join one party and forget about it. So one, it could be quite interesting to see, because that needs a lot of conversation. That needs a consultation, as the way Daktari was mentioning. Some of these requires a really serious consultation and requires a lot of thinking behind it, knowing that. And since you've said we are coming back to this particular conversation, knowing that there are other political threats that are ahead, other political landmines that are ahead. One, we are not sure whether, Honorable Raila still stays in the political scene.
Raila is still a factor, but,
or it will go away. There's a number of things that still, that still comes to play.
Yes, let's come back to the issue of UDA party. And UDA party has its owners. And UDA party has already started the grassroots elections in Nairobi and other areas. It is a process that's already underway. And this is happening before even these other parties make the decision whether or not to dissolve and join UDA party. If you look at this demand for the formation of a different outfit altogether, it is understandable from that perspective that those parties have not been part of a UDA process. And these are going to be the owners of the UDA party. If we come in as visitors, definitely we're not going to get proper space in this party.
Ndimuli, let me first of all correct you that UDA party have owners. UDA party owners are actually the citizens of Kenya. And
not
again, let me, as I go
that
on,
is also a clarification. That
let me go on, because I have to clarify.
This country is a member of UDA.
Yes, and if it is a higher percentage of Kenyans are UDA, then it is actually owned by Kenyans. But it does not have owners. Before even I go to that, we have had the best cabinet ever since we got independent. This is the best cabinet currently that we have.
Clarify on
the
that.
only problem is that we keep on blame games. You remember when Machogu, who issued a warning that we will not open schools at midnight, people blame him instead of applauding him that he's working even past the working hours. He was working in the wee hours of the night to make sure that Kenyans are prepared and to save our children. Now, let me come back to the issue of UDA. I've been with my friend William since I was in the university. He's now currently the president. And his mission and his vision for this country is for us to have political parties that does not have owners, that is owned by Kenyans. We can have 2 political parties in this country or 3 that compete on ideologies. You can imagine the party like the Democratic Party of USA, the Republican Party in USA, the ANC of South Africa, the Chama Pinduzi of Tanzania. It does not have owners. The owners are the citizens of that particular country. That is why it have outlived some of the big names that we know. ANC have outlived Nelson Mandela. Nyerere went, but Chama Pinduzi did not follow him. JF Kennedy went, but the Republican did not follow him. We want also to have a party in Kenya, parties that belong to Kenyans. And that is why we have our UDA grassroots elections, so that this party belong to Kenyans. So that when we compete in terms of ideologies. In Kenya, we have had multi-party, which actually have given birth to ethnic political parties. You can easily tell that ODM, the members of parliament elected in ODM, 90% are from Luo Nyanza. That's a fact. If you go to Wiper, 98% of members of parliament or MCAs are elected from Cumberland. If you go to ANC, unfortunately, it's part of us, but it's only in Luyaland. If it is for Kenya, the same. It's not even in Luyaland. It is in a small clan again within Luya called Bukusu. So you can imagine we have been having not political parties, but ethnic-based political parties. That is what William Ruto wants to discourage in this country, so that a son of a peasant can be a president, like William Ruto. A son from the smallest tribe of the Ndorobo, as far
all
they have
asking is
qualification.
Forget about UDA, let's form a new party that will encompass everyone and probably try and create structures for a new party that includes ANC and Ford Kenya comfortably.
Chama cha Mapinduzi was formed by some individuals, and later on some parties come and merge and went. You remember KANU? It was actually formed by the late Jomo Kenyatta, but again swallowed KADU and other small political parties, and it outlived Jomo Kenyatta. Yes, because it became a national party. And that is what we want, even if it is UDA, whether you give it another name or whatever. We just want 2 political parties, or 3 in maximum, in Kenya that will compete on ideologies, not compete because this party belongs to the Kikuyus have a bigger voting bloc, this party belongs to the Luos also have this voting bloc. We want a party that will say, this is our manifesto. The manifesto of UDA or Kenya Kwanza was the bottom-up economic model. The manifesto of Azimio was the trickle-down economic model. And then we compete on that line of ideologies.
And you've had issues with your own participation in a political party. Some members, even from Nyanza, would want to associate with the UDA. Wouldn't it be fair if at all a new outfit was formed and they joined that outfit instead of joining a party that's already in existence and already has its owners?
His owners, I don't want that his name.
They could be Kenyans.
That's close of its owners. It's interesting because even if a new one was formed, it would be still owned by somebody or those group. They are still owners.
Maybe shareholding would be a bit different.
That said, of course, on a light note, is my thinking about this whole issue of party formations and their existence. I think Kenyans, we have lost the major reason why political parties exist. And that's why every other person wants to have their own party. So actually, the dream of President Ruto to have one big party is valid. In fact, if you look at it in terms of unity and ease of operation. But then the question is, what ideologies do these people share together? Mm-hmm. So it may be important to address that. And my observation, and I think having been part of the party activities, I think the truth of the matter, the issue at stake may not even be ideologies. Mm-hmm. It may be, what piece of the cake do I have? I think this is the bit that if everybody addressed honestly, mm-hmm. then the dream of having 1 or 2 parties can be valid in Kenya. Because to be honest, you look at all these parties, you try to look through their manifestos, you try to look at the ideologies and the principles that are upheld. You don't see any significant difference. Let me shock you, Indimuli. Mm-hmm. You see this theory of economic bottom-up economy, the better. As a women rep who was working with ODM party and affiliated to Azimio, mm-hmm. I know my work was actually involving these very grassroots people, struggling to lift
Bottom
them up and bring them and empower them with information, training, basic skills, finances, and see them do something that can bring food to their table. So to some extent, I don't know whether this is a theory or an activity, but if you look at all these, like even when my own then party leader, the then presidential candidate was talking, Raila Odinga was saying, for economic empowerment, there would be 6,000 for every family.
That is social
that was
protection.
not working, you know, something like that. And yeah, whatever it was, the idea was to make this family have money that they can also use either to do some small business and raise themselves or buy food and meet their basic needs. So I think what President Ruto may need to address is what is the interest of these people? Like you put it,
shareholding.
It is that shareholding. That's all.
It's
because if you look at the ideologies, if they can work together as independent parties, but they come together, that simply means they agree on some common purpose. But now the question of refusing to merge, it means there is some individual interest that is not taken care of.
Yet we've seen the fact that parties dissolved to form Jubilee Party, but Jubilee Party right now is a pale shadow of its former self. Some of those who folded their parties may feel slighted or may feel that the merger was unfair. The dissolution of their parties, parties that existed and were powerful previously, I think like PNU and other parties that just dumped everything and went into Jubilee. Then 5 years later, the party is no longer in existence, or it is a very small party. Those are the risks that many of these people are looking at and saying, is it really worth it?
Yeah, and like I have mentioned, is quite you know, a number of those political parties that, you know, went into oblivion. I was just thinking whether that was the right decision to you know, to make. But as it is, there is politics, you know, is as it ought to be, and politics as it is. You know, the ideal versus the reality. The reality, the ideal being is that, you know, these political parties, you know, are owned, and I've had Honorable Sankok say that, you know, these are owned by the people. You know, the ideal is that inter-party political participation should be people-driven, in a sense that all these demographics should participate meaningfully in the life of a political party. That is how it's an ideal. The reality is that these political parties has owners, and I agree with you that even with the structure and how they are sent into position and how decisions are made, they are removed from the citizens themselves. You're asking yourself right now, do people still really you know, identify themselves with the hustler narrative as it was before? The reality is that they don't right now, as it was. Do people still identify with the Azimio, you know, wave as it was before? It is not. It is not, because after the elections, the owners in courts of political parties decided to take their own direction in their political party interest. And
forget about the message.
Forget about the masses. It's no longer about the affairs of the masses. It's about how, you know, their issues are taking place. Let me correct what Honorable Sankok said, that this is the most competitive, or what did you say, most qualified, or what?
Cabinet.
Cabinet. I was about to ask you, where did you get that statistics from?
Of course, I did a lot of research.
You know, and that is not published yet. According to TIFA report, by 7th, 2 out of 22 cabinet secretaries were given an approval rating of below 50%. That is what we can attribute. That is the statistic that is there.
At least
that one.
Do
is
you know
published.
the rest? Do you know the rest of the cabinet? How much they have scored? The rest
you know,
less than 25.
I'm just referring to what
we have less than
what is in public.
I want us to talk about,
you know,
this discussion.
and you see, that's what I'm saying. We cannot really quantify.
This is the best cabinet.
We cannot
I think
really
it's a fair
quantify.
assessment. We cannot quantify.
cannot
We can't.
quantify
We
whether
can't.
this is the best performing cabinet or not.
You could not disqualify my own research.
I'm not
I've done my research.
No, but publish it so that we see that we
TIFA
refer tweet and
TIFA have done their research.
You know.
They have given most of the cabinet secretary around 50%. But then, compared to the other cabinets, most of them scored less than 30%. So I think for me, this is the best cabinet that Kenya ever had.
Let's leave that discussion for now until we get your research published.
I will publish.
That we can compare.
Yes.
Let's now talk about Raila Odinga, and he features on the front page of the Daily Nation. We have exactly 9 minutes, so 3 minutes each as we make our final sentiments. Raila's dilemma in race for AU top job. They talk about the Azimio leader being in a difficult position in as far as his quest for the post of AU Commission chairperson is concerned, whether to tone down his attacks on President William Ruto, who's backing his bid, or go hard on the Kenya Kwanza failures and risk his chances. The story is extensively covered on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. And they talk even about the kind of challenges beyond our borders, the issue that Somalia and Djibouti, which have also fronted candidates for the position, have advanced their campaigns to lead the regional body as well. So he is facing internal issues as well as external competition as well. Bwana Sankok, let's start with you.
He is not facing any internal issues. It is you also having a very screaming headlines.
Well,
listen, our local politics is apart. Our local politics should be set apart. You know, I'm a member of UDA. I've been a greatest critic of Raila Odinga. But in fact, next week, I'll be traveling with the Right Honorable Joseph Ndakritimana, the Speaker of the East Africa Legislative Assembly, to Nigeria to campaign for Raila Odinga. And we will campaign in what we call OIC, that is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Despite the fact that
they have a candidate. No, don't worry about being... Those are our local politics, my friend. And you know...
That will not affect anything.
I'm the global geopolitician. So I'm above the local politics. What you people do around here is none of my business. We'll campaign for Raila Odinga. And we are campaigning for Raila Odinga because he's most qualified.
Even if he continues his attacks against the...
Let him continue attacking us. Let him continue even attacking Sangok. Sangok will campaign for him basing on his qualification as the chairman of the African Union Commission. And for me, I know Raila is the only human soul alive who can carry the aspiration and dreams of our Pan-African forefathers of uniting Africa into the United States of Africa. Because Raila Odinga is the bridge between the past, the present, and the future. Because of his age, he have interacted with our Pan-African forefathers like Nelson Mandela, like Julius Nyerere, like Kwame Nkrumah, like Muammar Gaddafi. Again, recently, in the last
what was his interaction with Kwame Nkrumah?
Of course, you know, because of his age, he was there. He's not reading in books like how you are reading as in Dumili of the dream of our Pan-African forefathers. If today I ask you, what was the dream of our Pan-African forefathers? They wanted to unite Africa. How was the unity of Africa to come about? According to Julius Nyerere, we should have regional economic blocks will later on become the building blocks of the United States of Africa. But according to Kwame Nkrumah, it was about uniting Africa at a go, that there will be a treaty of all the 54 countries. So for Raila, he have interacted with the Pan-African forefathers because of his age. He have also, as recently as 2022, was campaigning in Kenya, meaning he was interacting with the youth. So for us to be able to connect the past, the present and the future, then Raila Odinga is well-based. Raila Odinga is the father of Kenyan democracy. So I see him as the best place. And, you know, we have a dream, especially for us in East Africa Legislative Assembly, that we will have the United States of Africa in our lifetime. The only human soul alive who can unite Africa is Raila Amolo Odinga.
Do you share some of the concerns that probably the route towards the AUC chairmanship is no longer as clear as it was for Raila Odinga?
According
to me, a highway.
I really don't think so. Raila is has overwhelming support of Kenyans to this seat, including me, and the president and everybody else. But I think as we are living in this home, as a son of the family, if there's something he thinks he's not doing well, he should be given a chance to say it if he thinks he wants to say it. And yeah, I think this should not deter President Ruto from supporting Raila. He has committed himself.
Yes.
Let him fulfill his part and let Kenyans see that he was serious about this whole issue. And then people must also remember, you know, sometimes it is hard to just catapult people from what they are best at doing all the time to just make them shut up and they don't do it anymore. So gradually, as he moves to the AU, UAE, it would be fine. But the hullabaloo around what he said the other day, maybe he was just saying what he thinks his audience wanted to hear.
There are those who feel that probably he came to the realization that probably it was not going to be an easy
of course, it is not going to be easy because, like you see, there are other people with interest. And this is why I think being a Kenyan with the multipartyism and the pluralism that he has always operated in, I don't think the presence of this other candidate should scare him as a contender. Let him march forward. Let Kenyans march forward. And as he says, campaign for him and show the Africans why we think he's the best. Okay. So there is competition. And I think that is healthy. We didn't expect the African Union team to give him a free ticket. No. I think, to me, it is healthy, and let's not create a lot of hullabaloo around this. Until it is then, let's campaign for Raila, and let's support President Ruto in supporting his candidate. Because according to me, in fact, I first heard the declaration came from him first before Raila himself even declared that he is going for this seat. So it is his, we support his vision.
Okay, Bonorogo.
I had indicated that this is a poison chalice before in the set here. And I've repeated quite this a number of times, that the intricacies to get voted as the chair of the AU Commission, it is not the citizens of the Republic of Kenya or other nationalities from other African region. It is delegations that are headed by
heads of states.
That I had said before. And secondly, by the fact that Honorable Raila Odinga knows what the AU Constituted Act means when it comes to ascending to the position of the AU chairperson. You read chapter 4 of that Constituted Act, is very clear how people vote and what is the threshold that is met there. I have also indicated before that we should be very cautious about our geopolitical position and our geopolitical interest where it places as a nation. I would like to say that Honorable and the head of state is clear that he would want Honorable Raila Odinga to, ascend to this position. And he's been out campaigning. He's made it so clear that his position is to support and, rally the government agencies led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to lead in a charm offensive in terms of, diplomacy and shuttle diplomacy to make sure that Raila gets this position. However, we are here wondering whether that should limit him from, being out there to hold the government accountable on matters that are happening domestically in this country. Is that able to remove him and remove the goodwill of the government from campaigning for him? Honorable Sabkoka said they will go on to campaign for him despite the sketchy attack against the government. And I wonder how long would that stay if Raila persistently criticized the government, who is supposed to be leading the delegation to vote for him? All in all, the persona, the qualifications of Right Honorable Raila Odinga places him at a position to be the AU chairperson for the term that is coming next year. That, in its sense, now becomes complicated by these, block. So all this we wait to see as it is and as it ought to be. But I wish him, and I wish the government is capable of campaigning for him to be in that position. I think my parting shot, I keep on saying that we really need to keep internal vigilance. While we criticize, while we question, we as the citizens of the Republic of Kenya needs to be aware about the danger we put ourselves in our behavior, especially the flood situation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Odhiambo.
Thank you very much. Kenyans, we are all affected and impacted in one way or another. So I think we need to take responsibility, all of us. In our own little ways, let's do our little things in a manner that can preserve all of us and the values that we hold together as a nation. We need to look back at our value system, and especially, sorry for this, I have to come back to it, but the value system of this country, respect, honor, dignity, faithfulness, honesty, let's come back to it, and this, particularly to the members of Migori County and Nyanza region. Okay. I am tired of people dying in other people's funerals. Please let us stop it.
Thank you. Finally, Bwana Sankok.
Yes, we will campaign for Raila Odinga. He will be the chairman of African Union Commission, and possibly by that time we will have the United States of Africa and we will be the president. Of course, there is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which the minister from Somali claimed to have support, but that is just a claim. That is why we are moving with the Right Honorable Joseph Ntakiritimana, our Speaker of IALA, to Nigeria and specifically to West Africa to be able to support and to ask for support from even that Organization of Islamic Cooperation to support the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Okay. We will tell them his qualification, and I'm sure His Excellency, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, will be the chairman of African Union Commission.
David Ole Sankok, MP, East Africa Legislative Assembly, with the final word on State of the Nation this morning. Asante sana, Dr. Pamela Odhiambo, former woman representative Migori, and Daniel